Today is one of my favorite days of the year because I get to share with you the cards I made using the Gina K. Simon Says Stamp STAMPember collaboration. Hi, this is Jennifer. I'm so glad you're here. Every year during STAMPember, Simon Says Stamp has collaborative stamp sets with a lot of our favorite companies. And every year, one that I look forward to most is the Gina K. Designs collaboration. I have two cards for you today using this collab stamp set. One has a front flip that is really fun to do and you can do with basic shape dies. And then the other is a bonus card made with the leftover pieces. So this is a 2-for-1 and I think you'll like this design. It's simple yet creative. So let's take a close look at that collab stamp set between Simon Says Stamp and Gina K. Designs. This is the Shimmering Season 6x8 stamp set and coordinating die set. They're available together and separately. Now, this is one of those sets that once it's sold out, it's gone for good. And so if you're interested, you want to check it out sooner than later. But keep in mind, today's technique can be done with other products. And there is a lot that you can do with this stamp set. That is one of the reasons I was so drawn to it. You can do things like we do in today's technique. There are also individual snowflakes of a lot of different sizes that would be fun to use with a wreath builder. I will link to a video on that up here on the top right and below in my description. I like that the coordinating dies even cut out the littlest of sentiments. I just think this is a very classic stamp set, and that little branch and the bird would be fun to use. You could get a lot of use out of a set like this. Now, I also have gone through my circle die stash and found two circle dies. One that cuts that outer circle there, and then one that cuts the inner circle. I'll be using those two dies throughout this video. I don't actually use the dies that come with the stamp set or are available to go with the stamp set. I wanted to show you that this stamp set really has a lot to offer even without the dies. Now I wanted to show you the completed card first so you know where we're headed. The card is nice and flat, not much bulk to it. And when you open it, check out that fun flip that the front does to reveal an additional sentiment on the inside and the personal greeting. This one stands up really nice on display and is just fun to do. I have done a similar card design in the past that has a much more cutesy look to it, and you can check that out on the top right or in my description below just to show you that this is a really versatile design. Okay, I'm starting with a piece of cardstock that is 8.5 by 5.5 inches, and I will score that right down the middle at 4.25 and then fold along that score line. So basically, I'm making an A2 note card that is 4.25 by 5.5 inches. You definitely could do this card in any size that you want. It's pretty easy to modify. Next, I'll create a pencil line right down the center of this note card, which is 2 1/8 of an inch. I use a T-ruler to do this, but you could do this in a variety of ways to find that center point right down the front of the card. All right, next I need a circle die. This is the larger of the two circle dies that I mentioned earlier. It fits nicely in that large snowflake circle in our stamp set. You can use any die you want here as long as it's symmetrical. It works best with symmetrical dies such as circle, square, stars, hearts, anything that when you fold it in half, it meets up. I'm folding this circle die cut in half. This is just a guide. I used that circle die to create it, folded it in half so I knew where right down the center would be, and I'm temporarily adhering it onto the front of the card, lining up my pencil line with that fold line. So the only reason I folded that scrap piece of paper was to find the center of the circle and line it up with the center of our card. Next, I have my MISTI stamping tool, and I'll take that circle stamp image, the snowflake circle image, and I'll place that around that circle die cut. So again, that circle die cut is only there as a guide so that I can make sure that this circle image is centered on my card. So I'll close the door on my MISTI to grab that stamp, and now I can use my adhesive eraser to erase a lot of that pencil line and also that temporary adhesive I used. By the way, I have a Brutus Monroe stick and stamp mat in my stamping tool just to help make sure that this piece of cardstock stays where it needs to stay. All right, now I'm stamping this with sea glass ink, one of my favorite colors from Gina K. Design. I'm using all of her ink colors and cardstock colors today. This is my favorite color family, and it's also Gina's, so she's got a great color collection in this kind of pool or turquoise family. So I stamped that with sea glass on the front of our card, and that pencil line's down the center still. Now what I'm going to do is take my card and turn it inside out. So watch, I'm going to turn it inside out so that what's facing up now is where you would normally personally write your message. So the inside of the card is facing up towards the camera right now. So the card is inside out. And I'm going to stamp the same image in the same place. By using my stamping tool, I can be sure it's in the same place. And having that sticky mat in there really assures that it doesn't shift on me because I want it to be in the same spot. And by the way, I'm double stamping this image just because I really like this color and wanted it to be a little bit darker. All right, so now we have it stamped on the front of our card and on the inside of our card. There, you can see it there. Next, I'm going to turn it inside out and flip it. So we are going to be stamping on the other part that's on the inside. So this is on the back of the card's front, if that makes any sense. You'll see it all done here in a moment. And once again, I'm stamping that same image, same color, same position. So now we have this circle snowflake image stamped on the front, both parts of the inside. The only place I don't have it is on the back of the card. And it's in the same spot everywhere. Doesn't take long to do at all. To do that front flip design, we have to do partial die cutting, which sounds scary, but I'm going to show you it's very easy. You can do this with whatever die cut machine you have. Lay your card onto your bottom plate close to the edge as you see here. Line up your circle die with the circle in the image. You just want that circle to be in the center, and that's why we did all those tricks with the folded circle and all that. That circle's right in the center. Now I am going to put the top plate only over half of that circle die. So I'm lining up the edge of that top cutting plate with that pencil line that we created right down the center of the front of the card. Anything hanging out of that top cutting plate will not cut. Anything under the cutting plate will, giving us a partial die cut. So it's going to die cut half a circle. I'll run that through my die cut machine, and there you can see the partial die cutting. The next step is very easy. I'm going to use my scoreboard to score along where that pencil line is down the center front of our card. So I'm putting that score line, it's at 2 1/8 of an inch because that's right down the center. And I'm only scoring up to where that half circle starts cutting and then above where that half circle starts cutting. So again, the score line's only above and below that circle. I didn't score in the middle. You could if you wanted to, but you don't need to. Then I will fold back along those score lines and then reinforce that fold line. And there we have our front flip card design. Look how easy that was. Not hard at all. I thought it was cool that this circle snowflake image like surrounded that front flip circle window, but you can do it without the stamp too. You could do this with any images you want on that circle. And again, I've got that other video that I'll link to at the end of this one that shows a completely different style card with this front flip circle card design. Okay, let's do that circle element there that says Merry Christmas. I have some tips for you about stamping across multiple layers. Using that same sea glass ink, I'm stamping on 2 shades of pool cardstock, and I'm using that snowflake circle image. So I have a lighter and a slightly darker pool cardstock. You don't have to stamp on the pool one, but I want to save my leftovers for later, so I'm going to go ahead and stamp on it. All right, next I will use those 2 circle dies to cut from these pieces. From the slightly darker pool cardstock, I'll use the larger circle die, and I'll line that up in our snowflake circle and run that through our die cut machine. So it gives me this circle, and I love that circle with the frame. You could use it on a non-snowflake card too. Now you can see that fits nicely on that front flip because that's the same circle die I used for the partial die cutting. Now I'm using a smaller circle die to cut that inside circle of the stamped image. I'll run that through, and now we have that circle that'll fit nicely in the center of the darker circle. And both of those negative pieces on the right, I'm going to save for later for that bonus card. I love when techniques give you leftovers that are really nice looking because you can create 2-for-1 cards. I wanted some stamping on the smaller circle, so I used one of the large snowflake images from the Gina K Design stamp set, and I stamped that with sea glass ink, just adding more interest to the card. I plan to layer these two circles together and white heat emboss a sentiment across it. Because we're doing white heat embossing, I want to heat set both of these circles so I can be sure that the dye ink I stamped on there is completely dry, so we have nice, crisp heat embossing. I also used an anti-static powder tool. There are a couple ways you can do a heat emboss sentiment over layers. I'm going to show you one here, but the one I show later is even better, so stay tuned for that. I'm lining up the Christmas sentiment from that stamp set on the bigger circle. Again, I use my anti-static powder tool, and I'll stamp the Christmas with Versamark ink onto this. Now I'm stamping on top of anti-static powder tool, so I want to make sure I stamp this a few times with Versamark so that it really is nice and sticky and completely stamped, and that way I can get a lot of white embossing powder on it and get a crisp image. So I'm going to remove that from my sticky mat, add that white embossing powder, and heat set it. So this will give me a nice bright white image on this large circle. Once this is cooled, I'm putting it back into my stamping tool, and I'll take that same image and line it up with the stamping we've already done. So I'm just going to look above it. It's very easy to line up again, and also it doesn't have to be perfect. I will then close the door on my stamping tool to grab that stamp, and I'll take the other circle and I will temporarily glue that on top of the one that we've already heat embossed on. So now this is layered on top. I will then use my anti-static powder tool and stamp once again in Versamark ink and add that white embossing powder. So this will do the embossing on the small circle too. And now it will, the image will overlap those layers. So you'll see it on the darker circle and the circle in the center. It's fun to heat emboss over layers, and the way to get the best result is to do the layers separately, the heat embossing on the layers separately, and put them back together. If you just glue them together, then heat emboss across it, it'll miss some areas on the edges and not look as crisp. I did die cut an additional small circle to glue behind our heat embossed one, just for some added dimension, and then I will glue it on top of our bigger circle. I really like the look of this heat embossing across layered images. And again, I'm going to show you another method to get the same look that's actually a little easier, but I didn't think about it at this time, and you'll see that later in this video. I do want to put Merry above the word Christmas, and that's only getting stamped on that inside circle. So once this is dry, I'll place it back into my stamping tool, use my anti-static powder tool, stamp with Versamark ink the word Merry, and then white heat emboss that. By the way, there are coordinating dies for these words. I don't use them today, but I did show you earlier how all of those are included in the coordinating die set if you are interested. I think this Christmas word is so beautiful, and I'll be using it quite often this year. Now we can put adhesive on the back of the circle, and this will get glued right to the front of our card in the spot that is showing when the card is closed. And because we use the same large circle die to create this element as we did for the partial die cutting, it fits there nicely. It fits like a glove, and it looks really sharp. Again, you could skip all the different layers and stamping that I do and make this simpler, but I wanted it to be a simple design with a bold look. Now next, you can do whatever you want in these two openings in the center. At first, I thought I wanted this little bird here. Have a bird here and then write a personal message in the other circle. But I changed my mind and decided I wanted to save this bird for something else. This bird, branch, and snowflakes are all included in the same stamp set. So that is an option with this design if you want to. But I decided instead to use one of the other sentiments included in the stamp set, the one that says Happy Holidays. You can see me actually looking at it right now, trying to decide what to do, and I did decide to tear up my card. I tear up my card a lot. I usually edit it out to save the time that you spend watching my videos, but I change my mind a lot. So I'm carefully tearing this away, and I can save this bird for another card, and I am going to replace it with a different circle die cut, and we'll do Happy Holidays on it. So just keep in mind, I change my mind a lot. Everybody who makes YouTube videos does, and that's just part of the creative process. I want that inner circle element to look just like the one on the front, but say Happy Holidays instead of Merry Christmas. So I'm doing the same process that I did before. I stamped these snowflake circles on the 2 shades of pool cardstock with sea glass ink, and I'll use those same 2 circle dies to cut out from the center. I'm stamping that snowflake on the smaller circle, and then I will heat set both of our circles so that that ink is completely dry. I'll use my anti-static powder tool on the bigger circle first, and I'm lining up the word holidays. And this we're going to do a little bit different than last time. I'm using my anti-static powder tool, stamping holidays with Versamark ink a few times to get a nice, crisp, sticky image. Now before I heat emboss this, I'm going to leave that circle where it is and take the other circle and just gently lay it on top, centering it up, and I'll just hold it there with my magnet. And then I'll stamp the same image with Versamark ink on that. So I'm stamping on both of the circles with Versamark ink without shifting everything. Then I can remove them and do the white embossing on both circles. So last time I white heat embossed the bottom circle, then had to line it up and then stamp it on the other circle. This time I just did both at once, just carefully laying the smaller circle on top of the bigger. Now we have the holidays white heat embossed on both circles, and we can glue these together, lining it up beautifully. And we'll have a nice crisp holidays image stretched across the 2. This will get glued on the inside of the card, so now the front of the card and the inside mimic each other. Just one says Merry Christmas and the other says Happy Holidays. Now that third circle over on the right, I just die cut a large white circle and glued it in the center, and that's where I'll write my personal message. So this gives you a great spot to write a quick little message, and it's not seen when the card is closed. And this will stand up really nice on display. I felt like I needed a little sparkle on this, but I didn't want to add bulk, especially on the inside of the card. So here's a trick that I have for you. I'm creating my own little embellishments from glitter paper. I have silver glitter paper here, but I didn't have the right color of pool glitter paper, so I'm coloring it myself. I have Gina K Tranquil Teal, which is a dark pool color. I've ink blended onto my silver glitter cardstock, and I'll heat set it so that it doesn't rub off. Then I'm using a die from Hero Arts that cuts tiny little circles. You could do hearts, squares, whatever you want. And I'm gluing the tiniest of dots in the center of all of the snowflakes going around these circles. And I did this on the front and inside of the card. So this adds very little bulk, but it does add a little bit of sparkle, and it's a sparkle that matches the colors that we stamped with on our card. So let's look at the completed design before we start our bonus card. You can see it is nice and flat, will fit in an envelope wonderfully. And when you open it, that front element flips, showing the other sentiment and the personal message on the inside. So you could do this with any symmetrical die, a star, a heart, a snowflake, a circle, a square, a rectangle. You just want to line up your die cutting of that window, that flip window, with the center of that card. Remember, we did that pencil line that lined everything up, and then this card design will work. And again, I'll link at the end here to another example of this. I feel like the more examples you see, the more you'll know how to best use them with products you have. Let's make a quick bonus card. This one doesn't take long at all. I'm using those leftover negative space circle panels, and I'm going to glue those together for dimension. So the first panel will be the one that's on the front, and this one I've trimmed down to be 4 by 5¼ inches. I'm putting glue on the back of it, and by the way, it has the biggest circle opening. On the back of this, I'll glue another panel with the same size opening. This one I trimmed down to be even smaller. This is just to build up the dimension. You could skip that layer if you wanted, but I had it left over, so I thought I'd use it. Now I'll put glue on the back of this and add one more panel that's cut slightly smaller. And this has the smaller window opening. So we're going to create a window that kind of gets smaller in the center with all that dimension, and it adds a lot of interest. And look at, they're stamping on those 2 different layers. Now this I'll glue onto the front of a 4¼ by 5½ inch white note card. You could even die cut a circle in the front of your note card to create a window card if you wanted. I die cut silver glitter cardstock with an older Simon's Stamp snowflake die and glued that right into the opening. I then white heat embossed a sentiment from the Gina K stamp set on a scrap of pool cardstock and glued that at the center of the snowflake. I again used that Hero Arts confetti die to make tiny little silver glitter dots that I added around the snowflake just for more sparkle and interest. Here you can see that soft tone-on-tone stamping, that layering that we get using those negative space pieces, and a bonus card that we were able to make using our leftovers from the front flip card design. So there you go, 2-for-1 cards. I hope you'll try this technique. Again, at the end, I'm going to link to another video with this technique with a completely different style. And if you're interested in the supplies that I use, they are linked below in my YouTube description. I am so thankful you're here to watch this video and spend this time with me. I hope it was helpful, and I'll see you again soon with another video.